I have been a cardiologist for over 22 years. I have seen tens of thousands of patients. And I need to tell you something that took me 2 decades of clinical practice and 4 trips to Beijing's top cardiac research hospitals to fully understand. The most powerful heart attack prevention strategy in the world happens before breakfast. It takes less than 40 minutes. It costs nothing. And most people in the West have never heard of it until now. Because here is what Western medicine just confirmed. The morning routines practiced by Chinese physicians and their patients for generations are not folklore. They are not placebo. Study after study published in journals like Circulation, JAMA Cardiology, and The Lancet is now confirming what traditional Chinese medical practitioners have quietly known for a very long time. The hours between waking up and that first cup of coffee are the most cardiovascular dangerous window of your entire day. And how you navigate those hours determines whether your heart ages gracefully or races toward crisis. I am Dr. Ming Chen. I am a board-certified cardiologist specializing in preventive cardiology and cardiovascular aging. For over 2 decades, I have divided my time between clinical practice in the United States and research collaboration in China. And today I am going to share with you 5 specific morning practices that Chinese physicians routinely follow themselves, that are now backed by hard Western science. These are not herbs. These are not supplements. These are things you can do tomorrow morning, starting the moment you open your eyes. Let me start by giving you the most important thing I can give you right now, context. Because without it, none of this will make complete sense. Your heart is not equally at risk throughout the day. There is a phenomenon in cardiology called the morning surge. In the first 90 minutes after waking, your body does something dramatic. Cortisol spikes. Blood pressure climbs. Your blood becomes slightly more viscous, thicker, stickier, and your platelets become more activated, meaning they clump together more easily. Think of it this way. If your cardiovascular system were a river, the morning surge is when the current suddenly speeds up, the riverbed gets narrower, and the water gets thicker with sediment. That combination is when dangerous blockages and ruptures are most likely. A landmark analysis published in Circulation found that the incidence of heart attack peaks between 6 in the morning and noon, with a particularly sharp spike in that first hour after waking. This is not a coincidence, this is biology. And the 5 practices I am about to share with you were specifically developed, whether by design or by centuries of observation, to smooth that morning surge, protect the arterial walls, and give your cardiovascular system the gentlest, safest possible transition from sleep to full activity. Let us go through each one. Practice number 1, the transition ritual. How you wake up. This sounds almost insultingly simple, but please stay with me because what happens in the first 3 to 5 minutes after you open your eyes has a measurable effect on your cardiac risk that morning. Chinese physicians as a professional group are notorious for something their Western counterparts rarely do. They do not reach for their phone immediately upon waking. They do not spring out of bed. They practice what is called a graduated awakening. Here is what that looks like in practice. When you first wake up, before you sit up, spend 60 to 90 seconds simply lying still with your eyes open. Take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. This single habit activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest branch, and partially counteracts the cortisol spike. Then, sit up slowly, pause at the edge of the bed for another 30 seconds, and only then stand. Why does this matter? A study published in the Journal of the American Heart Association in 2019 found that orthostatic stress, the cardiovascular strain that occurs when you suddenly go from horizontal to vertical, is significantly more dangerous in older adults, particularly those with subclinical hypertension. The blood pressure swing caused by jumping out of bed can be as large as 22 millimeters of mercury in some patients. That is a significant jolt to arterial walls that are already navigating the morning surge. My patient Margaret, 71 years old, a retired school teacher, came to me 2 years ago with what she called morning dizziness and heart pounding. Her morning routine was exactly what most people do. Alarm goes off, phone goes on, immediately upright, immediately rushing. We changed nothing else in her life except how she woke up. 3 months later, her ambulatory blood pressure monitor showed a 20% reduction in her morning surge magnitude. She told me she felt like a different person. That changed in the first 3 minutes of her day. Practice number 2, warm water, not cold, and timing matters more than you think. In traditional Chinese medicine, the morning glass of warm water is almost sacred, and Western science has finally given us the mechanism to explain why it works. When you wake up after 7 or 8 hours without fluid intake, your blood is at its most concentrated, and therefore at its most viscous. That is the last thing you want during the morning surge window. You need to dilute the blood gently, and warm water does this more effectively than cold water for a specific physiological reason. Cold water triggers a brief vasoconstriction reflex. It momentarily narrows the blood vessels. On a normal afternoon, this is trivial. During the morning surge, when your vessels are already under strain, that additional constriction adds insult to injury. Warm water, between 100 and 112 degrees Fahrenheit, it does the opposite. It mildly vasodilates, reduces peripheral vascular resistance, and begins the rehydration process more rapidly. A study from the Journal of Nutritional Science and Vitaminology showed that drinking warm water in the morning significantly improved blood fluidity in middle-aged adults compared to cold water, with measurable changes in viscosity visible within 30 minutes. Chinese cardiologists routinely recommend 200 to 300 milliliters, roughly 8 to 10 ounces, of warm water before anything else enters the body, before coffee, before tea, before breakfast. Just warm water. It takes 60 seconds and it matters. Practice number 3. Morning movement that is not what you think. Here is where I want to challenge something that is deeply embedded in Western fitness culture. The idea that morning exercise means intensity, a hard run, a spin class, a heavy lift session. For cardiovascular health in people over 50, this approach during the morning surge window can be genuinely dangerous. Chinese physicians walk, they do Tai Chi, they do gentle Qigong, and they do it outside in the fresh air within an hour of waking. The medical establishment spent years dismissing Tai Chi as light exercise, and then the research started coming in, and it became impossible to dismiss. A landmark randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology in 2018 studied 837 adults with a mean age of 68 who had a history of cardiovascular disease. The group randomized to 12 weeks of morning Tai Chi practice showed a 23% reduction in resting systolic blood pressure, a significant improvement in heart rate variability, key marker of cardiac autonomic function, and a measurable decrease in inflammatory biomarkers, including C-reactive protein. Not a 23% improvement from a new statin, from Tai Chi. Here is the mechanism. Tai Chi and Qigong combine slow, deliberate movement with coordinated breathing and mild meditative focus. This activates the vagus nerve, the great governor of the parasympathetic nervous system. Vagal activation during the morning surge acts like a biological brake on cortisol, on platelet activation, and on arterial wall tension. It is, in physiological terms, the exact antidote to everything that makes the morning surge dangerous. This does not mean you need to become a Tai Chi master. Even 15 minutes of slow, deliberate walking, not power walking, but walking with intention, breathing slowly, arms relaxed, produces measurable vagal activation. The key word is slow. The key word is deliberate. You are not burning calories at this point. You are protecting your heart during its most vulnerable window. And now I want to pause here because I am curious about you. Think about your own morning right now. What is the first thing you do when you wake up? Do you reach for your phone? Do you have that cup of coffee immediately? Do you exercise intensely first thing? Or have you already been practicing some of these habits without fully knowing why they help you? Leave a comment below and tell me. I read them, all of them. And if this video is connecting with something you have already experienced or something you want to change, take 5 seconds right now and hit that like button. It helps me reach the people who need this information most. And if you are not yet subscribed to the Dr. Ming Chen channel, please do it now, because the next video in this series is going to address what happens to your cardiovascular system during the afternoon crash, and the one practice that can cut your stroke risk during that window by a third. Practice number 4, the breakfast composition that Chinese cardiologists have eaten for decades. I'm not going to tell you to eat exotic foods or order anything online. What I am going to describe is the general nutritional architecture of a traditional Chinese physician's breakfast, and why Western nutritional science has now confirmed it as one of the most cardioprotective morning meals possible. The traditional Chinese medical breakfast is built around 3 principles: warm, complex, and low glycemic. This is not trend nutrition. This is the opposite of what most Western adults eat in the morning. Cold food is avoided, again for the vasoconstriction reason. Simple sugars are minimized because a glycemic spike in the morning produces a secondary cortisol spike that compounds the morning surge, and the meal is warm and slow to digest. Foods like congee, which is a rice porridge, often enriched with ingredients like sesame, wolfberries, Chinese dates, or simple lean protein. What does Western science say about this architecture? A study published in Nutrients in 2021 followed 2,100 adults over age 55 for 8 years and found that individuals who consume a low glycemic warm breakfast consistently showed a 31% lower incidence of major adverse cardiovascular events compared to those consuming high glycemic cold breakfasts. The researchers controlled for age, smoking, BMI, and baseline lipid levels. The breakfast composition alone was independently predictive. You do not need to eat congee. The principles translate directly. A bowl of oatmeal, warm, not instant, with a handful of walnuts, a few blueberries, and a drizzle of olive oil, or 2 scrambled eggs with sautéed greens and a piece of whole grain toast. The key is warm, complex carbohydrate, healthy fat, and protein. No cold smoothie with 30 grams of simple sugar. No pastry grabbed at the door. Your arterial walls during the morning surge deserve better. My patient Robert, 64 years old, a former engineer, came to me with what his previous physician had called resistant morning hypertension. His blood pressure was consistently 10 to 15 points higher in the morning than at any other time of day. His breakfast was a granola bar and cold orange juice, eaten in the car during his commute in a state of stress. We changed his breakfast to warm oatmeal with nuts eaten sitting down before he left the house. Within 6 weeks, his morning hypertension had normalized without any medication adjustment. His wife called me to say she thought I had performed a miracle. I told her the miracle was oatmeal. Practice number 5. Morning sunlight and its direct effect on cardiovascular risk. This is the practice that surprises people the most and the one where the Western science is newest and most exciting. Chinese physicians have long practiced what is called morning sun alignment, simply spending time in direct morning sunlight during the first hour after waking. This was explained in traditional terms as receiving morning yang energy. Western molecular biology has given us a more precise explanation. Morning sunlight, specifically the full spectrum light that occurs in the hour after sunrise, triggers two critical biological processes. First, it rapidly synchronizes your circadian clock. Second, and this is the part that took decades to fully understand, it triggers the release of nitric oxide from the skin into the bloodstream. Nitric oxide is the most powerful endogenous vasodilator known to science. It relaxes arterial walls, lowers blood pressure, and reduces platelet aggregation. The exact opposite of what the morning surge is doing to your cardiovascular system. A remarkable study published in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology by researchers at the University of Edinburgh found that 15 minutes of morning UV exposure caused a significant measurable drop in blood pressure that lasted for hours. The researchers were careful to distinguish this from the vitamin D effect. Vitamin D synthesis is a different pathway and takes much longer. This was direct cardiovascular benefit from nitric oxide release happening within minutes of sun exposure. Chinese physicians in the communities I have visited and studied with routinely begin their morning movement practice outside. They are combining practice 3 and practice 5 simultaneously. Morning Tai Chi and morning sunlight. From a cardiovascular standpoint, this combination is remarkably powerful. Vagal activation from the movement plus nitric oxide release from the light, both acting simultaneously to suppress the morning surge at its peak. If you live somewhere with limited morning sunlight, a good quality light therapy lamp at 5,000 to 10,000 lux used during breakfast can replicate some of the circadian benefits, though the nitric oxide pathway requires actual UV exposure. In those cases, even 5 minutes outside at midday captures some of the benefit. Let me tell you about a moment in my career that changed the way I think about all of this. I was in Beijing visiting the cardiac rehabilitation department of a major hospital there. I was introduced to a 78-year-old retired physician, Dr. Feng, a man who had practiced medicine for 50 years. His resting heart rate was 51 beats per minute. His blood pressure was 118/72. His arterial flexibility, measured by pulse wave velocity, was equivalent to a healthy 45-year-old. No medications, no interventions, just decades of these 5 morning practices, performed with such consistency that they had become as natural as breathing. I asked him what he thought the single most important element was. He looked at me for a long moment and then said something I have thought about every day since. He said, "The morning is a conversation between your body and the day. How you begin that conversation determines what the day can become." I am a scientist. I believe in mechanisms. I believe in randomized controlled trials and peer-reviewed evidence. But in that moment, standing in that hospital in Beijing, listening to a 78-year-old cardiologist with the cardiovascular profile of a 45-year-old, I felt the weight of something much older than any journal article. The weight of accumulated wisdom. Wisdom that Western science is only now catching up to. Here is your action checklist for tomorrow morning. These are not suggestions. These are evidence-backed cardiovascular interventions that you can implement starting in the next 12 hours. Number 1, when your alarm goes off tomorrow, do not reach for your phone and do not spring out of bed. Lie still for 60 seconds. Breathe. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 6 counts out, 3 times. Then sit up slowly. Pause at the edge of the bed for 30 seconds. Then stand. Number 2, before anything else, drink 8 to 10 ounces of warm water. Not cold, warm, 100 to 112 degrees Fahrenheit. Before coffee, before tea, just warm water. Number 3, within the first hour of waking, spend at least 15 minutes in slow, deliberate movement. Walking is perfect. It does not need to be Tai Chi, but it must be slow, it must be intentional, and the breathing must be controlled. No intensity, no urgency. Number 4, eat breakfast sitting down before you begin your day. Make it warm, make it complex. Oatmeal, eggs, whole grains, vegetables. No cold smoothies, no pastries, no eating in the car. Sit, eat, breathe. Number 5, do your morning movement outside whenever possible, or spend at least 5 minutes in direct morning sunlight. If outdoor exposure is truly not possible, a high-lux light therapy lamp during breakfast is the best alternative. These 5 practices together do something remarkable. They transform the most dangerous window of your cardiovascular day into a period of active protection. They smooth the morning surge. They activate your parasympathetic nervous system. They dilate your arteries. They reduce blood viscosity. And they do all of this before most people have finished their first cup of coffee. This is general medical information, and it is not a substitute for personalized medical care. Before making any changes to your health routine, please consult your own physician, particularly if you have a diagnosed cardiovascular condition, are on medication for blood pressure or cholesterol, or have any symptoms that concern you. To the community here at the Dr. Ming Chen channel, I want to say something directly. The information I share in these videos exists because I believe deeply that people deserve access to the best possible evidence for how to protect their health, not get kept behind expensive consultations, not diluted by the noise of wellness trends. Real clinical science explained clearly, given freely. If this video helped you, please share it with someone you love. Leave a comment telling me which of these 5 practices you are going to start tomorrow. Subscribe if you have not already, and give this video a like if it felt worth your time. I will see you in the next one.